Hello and welcome to Property Matters here on Dublin South FM. You can contact the show on Twitter, Facebook or LinkedIn at iPropertyRadio, or indeed email hello@iPropertyRadio.com. Your host for today is myself, Carol Tallon, and I'm delighted to be joined by Graham Murray, Regional Director at Sherry Fitzgerald. Graham, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Carol.
Since you joined us on the show last, we have moved from audio to video and audio. So we can see that like ourselves, you're still operating remotely as well. Like every other estate agency in the country, the offices are closed. So how are things for Sherry Fitzgerald at the moment?
Well, I think things are well in terms of, I suppose, if you're looking at the market and a trading point of view. I think there's all the other aspects around people's well-being and health and all that. So I think we, obviously as a group, we do as much as we can to keep our teams together and working away. But I think from the property side of things are like, obviously with the restrictions coming in, they're a little bit more challenging, but we are still able to go out, view and inspect properties when they want to go to the market, measure them up and get them onto the market. So that's certainly a huge benefit to those people looking to buy and move forward. The challenge has been obviously the virtual viewings only. And again, given the circumstances, it is the right thing to do. So we can only do virtual viewings and then proceed with sale agrees and closings as well. So that's certainly been a challenging aspect to it.
Yeah, Graham, you and I spoke on air here probably about 6 or 7 months ago. And at that time, I really remarked on the resilience of estate agencies up and down the country to very quickly work through IPAV and the SESI, to work to put together HSE approved protocols. The training for estate agents, the perspex glass going into offices, there were huge changes made very quickly that required investment in technologies to facilitate remote viewings, to comply with all the protocols, and now here we are in early 2021, we're in our third lockdown, and each lockdown has been different. So level 5 doesn't mean what level 5 meant when you and I spoke last.
No, and it's actually, it was funny. One of my colleagues commented to me, God, well, if that's the worst, now we know what the worst is and we can deal with that. And then we got our level 5 and it had another nuance to it as well. So we kind of figured that last level 5, we continue to do it, or like even with the offices closed, we'd work fully remotely and still be able to do viewings in a very controlled environment, because our viewings are very controlled, as you rightly point out. So we'd have one viewer every 15 minutes, and that has changed. But I think, look, given the rates of spread at the time, certainly this year, it's been the right thing to do. But we adapt, we move forward, and the market remains incredibly resilient. A lot of it is driven by a shortage of stock in the marketplace. So while we are bringing on a reasonable amount of property, you're still finding that it's not anywhere near enough there to meet the demand from the buyer side. And I suppose that's what's remained strong. People are, in the last lockdown, were buying on the basis of virtual viewings, but actually, again, they're doing exactly the same thing again, and probably because they're much more used to this now before. I was kind of making a comment there, like a number of years ago, to the clock back 10 years ago, not even that long ago, 2-3 years ago, you wouldn't be agreeing a property to somebody who hadn't actually seen it or had a family friend come along and inspect the property for them. Whereas now it's completely different to that now. And people are happy to do that. Both vendors and buyers are happy to agree and move on to the next stage again.
Yeah, it's amazing. Over the last number of years, we have been chronicling all of the technologies that have come in to make the property transaction frictionless, seamless, and very much remote. So the capability was there, and it has been there for a number of years. But the culture shift, definitely within the last 12 months, the culture shift has been, to my mind, a much bigger shift than the technology shift across the property industry. Because again, the mentality, the mindset of people, it's completely changed. And in fact, we're the current level 5 lockdown restrictions as they pertain to property, having to sale agree a property before gaining access just seems like something that 2-3 years ago would have been inconceivable. How are buyers and actually, it's one thing for investors, they're used to buying through online auctions.
It's different,
excuse me. But say for inexperienced buyers, first-time buyers, this is the biggest, most important transaction and decision that they're going to make, the most expensive that they're going to make. How are they adjusting to having to make such a big commitment without setting foot inside the property?
Yeah, I think when you look at maybe first-time buyers, as you brought there, I think what you find with first-time buyers, they're incredibly resilient and incredibly enthusiastic. So you probably have a whole cohort of first-time buyers who are maybe back living at home, saving lots of money. And obviously this has been very difficult for a whole part of society, but there's another part who have all, it hasn't been a massive impact in terms of incomes and their ability to save. So you do have a group of first-time buyers who are now living at home, mum and dad again, or with the in-laws, and that was maybe not the plan, but it is what it is, and they've been saving. So when the opportunity comes along, I think, to look at property or see something that they know that they can move to, if you take the new homes market, like when they have a release of properties, to be fair, the 3-bedroom semi is very similar to the next 3-bedroom semi on the row. So from their point of view, it kind of makes a lot of sense. What you see online is pretty much what you're going to be getting. With second-hand properties, absolutely, there can be some nuances to that. But I think with first-time buyers, they maybe either grew up in the house that they're looking to buy now, they're currently renting in the same development at the moment, so they know the houses actually incredibly well. They're probably within their 5K and they can walk around, have a look at it from the outside, things like that. So I think from their point of view and looking at the homes, I think from their point of view, they're looking forward and just going, look, it is what I want. There isn't a huge amount of choice out there. If they were also, we had an incredibly busy run in the first few weeks back in January because you had a hangover of buyers who didn't purchase in the last quarter and then saw what they saw again, went through Chris and go, right, you know what? I'm not waiting around any longer. I'm very happy with what this particular property is, and they're moving forward. And again, it's interesting just talking even to around first-time buyers and property types. Like, it's not always about houses. Like, I sent to a colleague of mine and have this very nice apartment, 2-bedroom, and we thought it'd all be about the trade down market. And actually turns out first-time buyers leading the chart. It's right beside a lovely big open park. So the lifestyle choice and being part of a secure community is a big difference for them now as well. So you often find it's the first-time buyer market is actually incredibly resilient and incredibly enthusiastic about moving on to the next stage and the next chapter.
That's actually really heartening. Could part of the speed, I understand that there are buyers who are, or intending buyers who are ready, and they're just waiting for the right opportunity. Mm-hmm. But is there an element maybe of people who have secured mortgage approval and they want to make sure that they buy within the period of their approval? Is that driving demand?
Yeah, you'll have a like everything. I think a market isn't made up of one component. It's made up of a number of different factors and components that drives the market. So there's certainly an element there of people who are possibly moving towards the end of their approvals, who are just keen to kind of now purchase and move on. So the mortgage market and the people's ability to purchase certainly plays an influence on how quickly people are willing to move right now and into the market as well. But I do think that ultimately it is about the stock. And I think people have seen over the last year, the market was very resilient. There's considerably less property on the market now. So if you're making your choices, and I think because what COVID, in my opinion, what it starts to do is, from a property side, it just compounds your reasons to move. So if you were looking to move last year for a home office, a bigger garden, or go to something a bit more right sizing and something a bit more compact, that hasn't changed. And in fact, that presence around you has made you want to move that bit quicker. So if you have a family, you've got kids, and you need an extra room and you need an extra garden, that's only been compounded by COVID reasons. So I don't see any reason why people kind of be holding back in their purchasing decisions. And I think the mortgage market is competitive. There's plenty of lending going on. That's what certainly our financial advisor tells them, what we see on the ground as well. So again, no reason to be holding back.
There's a few really interesting trends to unpack there in what you're saying. I wonder, just given that Sherry Fitzgerald has such a large share of the residential market in Ireland, you're likely very well positioned to be able to look at trends at a very early stage and identify them long before maybe they're felt in the marketplace. So in terms of changing buyer demands, whether it's first-time buyers or indeed people trading down, I think you're absolutely right, as in COVID has shown us maybe some of the shortcomings of not just our current homes, but actually some of the interior design trends that we've seen in terms of open plan. It's great for a family that only comes together for 2 or 3 hours in the evening. not so great for having two professionals trying to do different jobs with ongoing Zoom calls and 2 or 3 kids homeschooling.
Everything at the same time.
Yeah. So I mean, look, there are some design trends that I do believe are likely to become longer term after COVID, and I think that's an interesting one. But can you tell, maybe from some of the buyers that you've been speaking to, are there buyers that you were speaking to maybe this time last year that are proceeding now, but their requirements have changed, either in terms of being in a much better position financially because they have been living at home, not renting, therefore more savings, but they also might have a different idea about how they want to spend their money?
Yeah, like it is interesting. Like, it was funny. I'm just thinking about some pals of mine who are actually moving at the moment, and some of their requirements have moved and have changed along the way. And actually, it's interesting you brought up the whole open plan living, because actually friends of mine who were going to knock through and have the bigger space have decided not to do that, and they're going to have 2 good sized rooms, but that they can close off then from each other then as well, to allow for the way we could very well be living in the future. Because actually, for this particular couple I'm thinking of, they both can work remotely, and there's no rush to go back into the main offices now. So they don't see that changing down the line actually as well. So I think requirements over the last year of what people have looked at have shifted. Like, you could have started the beginning before COVID. So back in January, February, you were going in, you were looking for, particular requirements. And then all of a sudden you're kind of going, you know what, actually, I don't want to live smack bang in the city. I would like to live further out. It could be a lifestyle choice. And I don't mean like living all the way out in the country or something like that. I just mean that you could decide that you want to live closer to parks, the seafront, these various different things that people now look at and go, do you know what, it's so important that you're able to get out and about, have more space for the kids to play, or ourselves to get out and about and enjoy. So I think lifestyle now plays a huge factor to how people are committing with their purchases going forward. And you've definitely seen a shift in that. Having said that, you'll also see people who were buying, as I mentioned, the apartment one was just a prime. You think people, oh God, the apartments, people don't go to. They're selling incredibly well, and actually not always to whom you think they will be, because the factors for apartments can also be that over the last number of years, they've built them in very well settled areas. So you can't get the house you might like, but you know what? You can get all the amenities, you can get all the facilities, but you're just in a slightly different housing product.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting one as well, because certainly for buyers, the primary advice would always be to get the right area first. And then it's the right property, and then it's all of these other things that make up your wish list. But actually, if the area isn't right, what we know from people stuck in very large homes in, commuters that have not proven to be great in terms, or the commuter suburbs, we know that it's never about the property, it's always about the area, and that's a real truism. We learned it persevered through the last crash, it'll persevere through COVID, and I think it's really a standing requirement. But what I'm particularly interested in when I'm looking nationwide at the markets, we spoke with Ronan Lyons last week following the publication of the rental report, and it was really interesting to see some of the trends, and we looked at the likely impact of the ongoing restrictions on the delivery of new homes into the market for 2021 and 2022. But for my mind, just from speaking to estate agents right around the country, the sellers of second-hand homes seem to be a bit slow to come forward. And it's not because they don't want to move, it's because they think there's no active market out there. How have they gotten it so wrong?
I think there's always a lot of information floating around, and I think the property market's one of those certain areas where there's loads of information, and sometimes there can be a disconnect. And I think the way the property market moves, a lot of the information that we do get can be a little bit slower than the real-time information. And as you point back, given the size of Cherry Fitz, we probably noticed a lot more of these trends coming that a little bit sooner. So it's quite interesting when you look at the market. Like we would always, and like if I was on a personal basis, would I sell right now? Would I put my home to market right now? Yes, I would, because what I'm seeing is that the shortage of supply is meaning that buyers are getting good prices at the moment. There's definitely going to be more property coming to the market in around the 5th of March and beyond that. So I suppose if I was looking at this and going, right, you know what, the biggest obstacle for a lot of people is, one, as you say, not realizing maybe how vibrant the market actually is at the moment and what's actually happening with it. But I think if you just go around as a buyer right now, you can go on to the different property portal sites and actually see. And if you're registered, you just don't see that many updates coming through of new properties. So you'll be kind of going, right, I want to move, but I have so little choice to move to. So I'm not going to put myself or my family or whatever may be under pressure to make that move right now. And, you know, okay, with the virtual viewings, am I comfortable or not comfortable with that? But I think what will happen is, if you are one of those buyers who does need to sell their home, whether it's trading up or trading down, I think now is the right time, because more property comes, and then you're going to be competing with mortgage buyers. They're renting, they're cash buyers, they're ready to go. And all of a sudden you're then back in that circle then of trying to sell and get ahead of those particular buyers. So I think for me, that type of buyer, that or seller, and then going to buyer, is the right time to be doing things right now. So it's really about us trying to communicate with our buyers and our sellers and giving them as much factual information that we can about the amount of sales that are happening, the good prices that are being achieved at the moment, and then getting themselves into the best possible position to take advantage of when the new homes come out, second-hand homes, when they come onto the market that they're looking to buy, that they'll be in a good position to purchase them, because they will come. It's just we're a little bit on that time lag at the moment. And there's a variety of reasons. Like, we have clients who are elderly and they just don't feel safe about putting the house to the market. I've got a particular couple, I think of now, and they just want to get their vaccine so they can start that process and then move it on again, because they're definitely moving. And then you've got the whole cohort then of just can't find, there's not enough stock out there at the moment. But markets move really quickly and turn very quickly. And what we know from the last lockdown is that, like all agents, we had a huge stock of houses waiting to come to the market for vendors who were ready. And it'll be the same thing again. So there will be a lot more property coming on, and we know that the market kind of almost took off. Like, we did 5 months trading in 3 months last year. Like, it's incredible. So like, I think that's exactly what's going to happen here now. It won't be seasonal. We'll come out of it and it'll just continue all the way through again for as long as we can get the stock to the market.
Graham, that's great advice for people who might be thinking of selling. It's a good note of advice to finish up on. That was Graham Murray, Regional Director at Sherry Fitzgerald. We need to take a quick break. Stay tuned.